The snapping feature in Affinity is similar to the snapping feature in Illustrator. However, the snapping feature in Affinity is a bit more intuitive and simple. To access the snapping feature, we can navigate to the top right corner and click on the snapping icon to activate the snapping option. If we want to turn it off, we can click it again to turn it off. We can access different kind of settings related to snapping by clicking on the drop down icon on the right of the snapping icon, and you can see that there are many settings of snapping here. The next way we can access the snapping option is by navigating to the view menu and clicking the snapping option right here, and this will give the same option settings for snapping that we saw right now when we access the snapping settings from the top right corner of the UI. I'll close this box right now and access the snapping settings from the top right corner of the UI, and I'll click on this icon to see different options for enabling snapping. The first option that we have is the option to enable snapping, and if we toggle this option on, now our snapping mode is enabled and we can snap different objects with each other after this. The next settings that we have is the screen tolerance settings. So basically, screen tolerance settings refers to the amount or the area in which an object snaps with each other. That is, if the tolerance level is higher, in this case it's 50, then the snapping area will also be higher. That is, if I need to snap the green box with the blue, then even if I go near a certain area, then it will snap with the blue like this. And let's say if I decrease the tolerance level all the way down to, let's say, 7s, then the area will become much more smaller. That is, I need to move the green box closer to blue to snap it like so. The next settings that we have is the preset, and I would like to choose the page layouts with objects as a preset, since we have different objects that we want to snap inside the page layout. So I'll leave that as it is, and if you want to explore other presets, you can also select the other presets. Like if you're working with UI design, you can select UI design, and each of the presets work on its own way. So the next option that we have is the candidate option, whose value is immediate layers for now, and I would like to set it as immediate layers because I want to snap an object with its immediate layers or the nearest layers in the layers panel. So I want to set the value of the immediate or the candidates to immediate layers. You can also change the value for the candidates to candidate list, immediate layers, and children, all layers, if you want to snap an object with all the layers. So you can adjust the options as per your preference here as well, and this determines which candidate you want an object to snap with. So the next settings we have is the page snapping settings. Right now it is enabled, and there are different checkboxes that we can enable here. We can enable snap to grid, snap to baseline grid, snap to guides, snap to spreads, and more. And basically it's asking for in which reference or on which thing that we want to snap to. So for example, let's say if I turn on snap to grid, now it will allow me to snap this green object right here on the screen to the grid. Right now the grid is not visible. However, let's turn on the grid by clicking the shortcut key of Command apostrophe, and you can see that the grid is visible. And as we have turned snap to grid option on by checking this box, we can simply move, and you can see now that the object, which is green, is easily being snapped perfectly to the grid lines in the grid, and we can again turn the grid lines off by holding down the command and apostrophe shortcut key. For now, I'll turn the snap to grid option as off. The other settings that we have is the object snapping settings, and there are many settings under this where we can set by checking or unchecking the checkbox. For example, there is a settings like only snap to visible objects. That is, if we hide a particular object, let's say, from the layers panel, and if this particular option is turned on, then now this object will not snap to the object which is blue because it is hidden. So like this, there are other settings as well which we can play around, like snap to object bounding boxes, include bounding boxes and midpoints while we are snapping, and more. The next useful and handy feature of this option of enable snapping is force pixel alignment. If we check force pixel alignment, you can see that move by whole pixels is also checked. So what this basically does is, let me turn on the blue box as well again and enable the transform panel. So what this basically does is, if we have a whole numbers in the x and y coordinate attributes, then if we move a particular object or graphic element, then you can see that the position is not in decimal anymore. The position is in whole numbers. So basically, this is what turning on this particular settings of force pixel alignment and move by whole pixel does. So this enables us to work by moving or aligning objects by whole numbers instead of decimals. And if we turn this particular settings off, then now you can see that when we move these, now the values are in decimals, like 0.4. Okay, so now we can move the objects in decimal numbers as well. So this is what this particular settings does. So I think you have understood and grasped the concept of snapping in Affinity by now. If you find this video helpful, please press the like button. And to know more about Affinity's tips and tricks in the future, please don't forget to press the subscribe button. Thank you for watching this video and see you on the next video.